Mr. Higgins, if you went back to Canton PD at 1:30 in the morning, you would certainly be in a position to monitor anything that was happening at Canton PD at the time that at least you were there, correct?
No.
You would be inside the building, correct? With access to dispatch and anything else that was happening around that floor, that area, correct?
I did not go into dispatch.
You would have access to the interior of the police station at that time if you went back to Canton PD at 1:30 in the morning, correct?
I'd have access.
You could see if there was any activity going on, any calls, call outs, things of that nature.
I didn't have access to that, and I wasn't looking for it.
Not that you were looking for it, Mr. Higgins. My question is more simple than that. If you were there, you'd know what was going on inside the building.
No.
So if you walked in, you would just be completely oblivious to anything that was happening. For instance, if troopers started amassing to go out to a call, you wouldn't see that.
Objection sustained. Ask it differently.
If you were able to monitor, you'd be in a position to monitor what was happening at the station around 1:30 in the morning when you were over there, correct?
No.
So how long did it take you to get home from Canton PD?
A little longer from after I moved the vehicles.
Correct.
I don't know. It could have been 15 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes.
You live alone?
I do.
You did then?
Yes.
What did you do when you got home?
I think I had something to eat, maybe a couple more drinks.
Then you went to bed?
I was either on the couch or in the bed watching the news.
In any of the prior testimony that you've given in this case, have you ever indicated that you slept on the couch that night?
I don't know.
Well, you reviewed your testimony before you
Well,
testified.
those would be the two options.
Okay. I didn't ask you about your options. I asked you if you reviewed your testimony before you testified.
Yes.
When you reviewed your testimony previous to coming in here today, did you ever testify that you slept on the couch that night?
No, I slept in my bed, but I could have started somewhere else.
Did you ever testify in the previous hearing that you started somewhere else?
Not that I know.
Did you ever mention a couch in any of your description about what you did when you went home that night?
Not that I recall.
As a matter of fact, what you did mention under questioning in a different hearing was that you may have gotten something to eat, then went to bed, put your stuff on the nightstand next to your bed, correct?
That would be the routine, yes.
You did not make or receive any calls after returning home that night.
No.
You were clear when you went to sleep in your prior testimony that you put both your work and your personal phone. You had two at the time, correct?
Yes.
A personal and a work cell phone, right?
Yes.
You put them both on your bedside table because that's what you do every night. Is that right?
Most often, yes.
As a matter of fact, you were asked whether or not you have a charging station, and you said, yeah, it's right on my bedside.
I don't know that I don't have a charging station.
Right, you said no, bedside. In other words, you keep your phone by your bedside, on your bedside table.
Usually.
You also testified that you did not use your phone that night to go on social media, correct?
Correct.
You indicated that you didn't go on social media because you don't have social media. You don't use it that much.
I don't.
You said, I don't have Gram. I'm guessing that means Instagram, correct?
That is correct.
And you don't use Snapchat, and you, quote, don't do those things, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so you testified that the first call you received after returning home on the 29th was a call from Chief Burke just before 7 a.m., which woke you up. Is that right?
It was around 6:30-ish, I think.
Your testimony previously was at some point before 7 a.m. That call was the one that woke you up.
Yes.
And it turns out, Mr. Higgins, that was a lie, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't a lie.
When you were asked that question at a previous hearing, you didn't know that the person questioning you had your phone records, did you?
I assume they did.
And you were thereafter confronted with those phone records, correct?
I was asked about them, yes.
And those phone records established that you and Brian Albert actually exchanged not one, but two phone calls at 2:22 a.m. that morning at a time when you claimed you were in bed asleep, correct?
I have no recollection of any phone calls.
Take a look at those two documents and tell me if you recognize at least the top one.
Do they have a page number for me to follow or no?
I was just asking Ms. Little. I don't think we've introduced them, and no, they don't have a page number, but I'm going to ask that they be marked for identification at least at this point. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
Mr. Higgins, you see the document on the lower right. It has a page number or there's a numeric indicator 01770. In other words, 1770
On the lower right-hand corner,
in the right. I mean, in the red.
01771.
Look at the next page.
Why don't you come show
Am I
me?
missing something?
It's okay, it's okay. I'll use the one with QQ and the one with 1771
When you're referencing them. When you're referencing them?
when I'm referencing them.
Okay.
Take a look at the one that's marked with the QQ.
I see it.
You've certainly seen that document before, correct?
I think I've seen it maybe on a screen, not in my hand.
These were the records that were shown to you at a prior hearing?
Yes.
And you acknowledge that at least the one marked QQ is a record of your calls, correct?
It has my name, my telephone number, correct?
And it indicates that on January 29th, 2022, at 2:22 and 35 seconds, you received a call from Brian Albert, duration of 1 second, correct?
Yes.
In other words, Brian Albert called you at 2:22 and 35 seconds, but it looks like you missed the call, correct?
I see the 1 second call, yes.
There's a second call just below that on the same date at 2:22 and 52 seconds from you to Brian Albert. Do you see that one?
Yes.
And the duration of that call is 22 seconds, correct?
I see that, yes.
So 17 seconds after you missed a call, according to these records, from Brian Albert, you called him back, and there was a call lasting 22 seconds. Is that right?
That's what the records say.
So the fact is, you were speaking to Brian Albert in the middle of the night, approximately 3 hours before Mr. O'Keefe's body was found in his yard, correct?
No, that's not correct.
And that was 5 minutes before 2:27 a.m. when there was a Google search for how long to die in the cold, correct?
Objection.
And then, of course, you lied about that under oath in that prior proceeding by saying, I don't remember this phone call.
Objection.
Did you, in fact, tell the truth at the prior proceeding when you said, I don't remember that phone call?
I always tell the truth.
Did you lie under oath, sir?
No, I did not.
Would you tell us if you did?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You acknowledge that there's a 22-second phone call in your phone records, correct?
That's what's reflected by the record.
And 22 seconds is quite an amount of time. Would you agree?
It's 22 seconds.
As a matter of fact, it's about this long, with the court's permission.
The court does not give permission. That's argument, Mr. Jack.
If we were to count off 22 seconds, it's an uncomfortably long time, is it not?
No,
It's long enough to have a conversation, isn't it?
I didn't have a conversation.
Is 22 seconds long enough to have a conversation?
No.
A human being can't have a conversation in 22 seconds?
Sure they could. I don't think it's anything of substance.
Okay, so that's my question. Is it 22 seconds long enough to have a conversation?
I don't agree with it, no.
Now, when you were asked about this and you were shown these records, that prior hearing, you had an explanation for what that 22-second call may have been and what the prior call may have been, correct?
Yes.
What was your explanation?
Well, I used a phrase that people commonly used as a butt dial.
So you think it's possible that you may have butt dialed Brian Albert for a 22-second call that you're not aware of?
I think it's possible that he could have been inadvertently called back, but I have no recollection of that, nor did I have any conversation with anybody.
But you admitted that you lived alone, correct, Mr. Higgins?
That's correct.
You have an iPhone at the time.
Yes.
Matter of fact, that reflecting those records is in fact, or was in fact, an iPhone. Is that right?
Yes.
You already indicated under oath that you don't sleep with your iPhone. You keep it on your bedside table. Is that right?
Most often, yes.
There's nobody else in your room. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you had your ringer on because you were awakened the next morning by a call from Berkowitz, right?
Yes, the ringer was on.
When somebody calls you and you miss the call, there's a notification that shows up on that iPhone. Isn't that right?
I don't know how mine's set up at the time. I don't know.
If you open up your phone app and you go to recents, it shows all the missed calls, correct?
I think you can get to them, yes.
And you know that the iPhone does not automatically call people back. That is not a thing, right? You miss a call from someone, it's not just going to automatically re-ring them.
Yes, I think we both know that, yes.
So to call somebody back, you have to go on your iPhone, open it up from a locked position, navigate to a phone application, then navigate to a contact, and then make a call, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. You can break it down.
Sure. In order to call somebody back, if you've missed a call, first have to unlock your iPhone.
You would have to, yes.
You can do that either through Face ID or through a 4 or 6-digit passcode, right?
Yes.
Don't tell me the code, but did you have a 4 or a 6-digit passcode locking your iPhone at the time?
I don't know if it was a digit code or Face ID.
If you have a Face ID, you have to have a digit code as well, right?
I guess so.
Okay. Did you open your phone with your Face ID or a multi-digit code?
No recollection of answering the phone or calling anybody back.
You also have to navigate, once the phone is unlocked, you have to navigate to the phone app, correct?
I don't know necessarily if you unlocked it with your face, if it would be right there. I've never thought about it.
Once you unlock that phone app, you have to manipulate the phone on the screen with your finger in order to make a call, correct?
You would have to hit at least one button.
At least one, right?
Yes.
So that's 3 or 4 interactions with the phone that have to be physically undertaken to just make one call, right?
But I didn't make any calls.
So how'd you butt dial it?
I didn't make any calls. I have no recollection of any calls, nor did I speak with anybody.
After you were shown these phones at that prior hearing, in that hearing at least, you finally admitted that you did in fact call Brian Albert back, but this time you claimed the two of you just sat in silence. Isn't that right?
Objection.
So I'm going to sustain it in that form. You can ask it appropriately, Mr. Jackson.
Did you ever previously testify that you did in fact make the call, but you did not have a conversation during the course of the call?
What I think I testified was something must have happened, but I didn't have any phone call.
Do you remember being asked, quote, did you call him back, end quote, and you answered yes? And then there was a question.
There was a series of questions there. That's only a fragment of what I said.
I'm not done yet, Mr. Higgins. Can you answer my question?
Yes.
To the question, did you call him back? Your answer was yes, correct?
I think it was I must have.
Then you were asked, well, the answer was yes. And then there was a colloquy back and forth where you spoke over each other's words, right?
It was dialogue back and forth about this whole thing, yes.
You see the pink highlighted question and the pink highlighted answer.
Yes.
What's the question? Please read it for me.
Did you call him back?
What's the answer?
Yes.
You then said a little bit further in that same conversation, I did not have a conversation, correct?
I did not have a conversation with anybody.
And the question following that was, you just listened to the phone, what someone was telling you? Answer, it's possible that the phone picked up on the other end and nobody said anything. And then I terminated the call, end quote. That's what you said at the other hearing under oath, correct? Yes or no?
Can I see it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Portion in pink. Read that answer to yourself, please. Have that in mind, sir?
No, can I have a minute, please?
Does that refresh your recollection about how you answered that question?
Yes.
And your answer was, it's possible that the phone picked up on the other end and nobody said anything. And then I terminated the call. That's the only thing.
Meaning it's possible it could have happened.
Possible it could have happened that you had a 22-second call with Brian Albert,
I
correct?
did not have a 22-second call with Brian Albert. There was no conversation.
You've had some time to think about this 2:22 a.m. call, correct? Since that last testimony.
Some time to think about it?
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about it, no.
So for over a year, you haven't even considered the fact that you were caught with a phone record lying about not having a conversation with Brian Albert at 2:22 in the morning.
Objection.
Mr. Higgins, what was so important that you and Brian Albert needed to discuss something at 2:22 in the morning?
There was no discussion. I never talked to Brian Albert.
Then why the 22-second phone call, sir?
Objection.
I want to talk about what you did after you woke up on January 29th, 2022. That was obviously a memorable day in your mind, correct?
It was a sad day.
The very first person you spoke to after waking up was who?
I believe I said I got the call from Chief Berkowitz.
That's not my question.
Say that again?
Who's the first person you spoke to on the phone that morning when you woke up?
Brian Albert.
Whose idea was it for you to drive to Brian Albert's house that morning?
It was my idea.
Was it important to you to speak with Brian Albert in person rather than over text or phone call?
No, it was important to support the people that were there.
So, of course, you drove over to his house, an opportunity to speak to him in person without any law enforcement presence, correct?
I was there with everybody, not just Brian Albert.
And Brian Albert was in the house and you were in the house, right?
That's correct.
So you had access to him and others without any law enforcement there. Is that right?
That's correct.
As soon as you got off the phone with Brian Albert that morning, who did you call at 7:22 a.m. if you were?
I think I might have called Chief Berkowitz back.
So as soon as you got off the phone with Brian Albert, first thing in the morning, the next call you made was to Chief Berkowitz. Is that right?
Yes, because he had called me first. Yes, I called him back.
Did you request from Chief Berkowitz any information that he may have had concerning the investigation surrounding John O'Keefe being found at 34 Fairview that morning?
No.
Were you trying to see how much law enforcement knew right away?
Absolutely. I didn't even know what happened.
Were you trying to gather information about what happened so that you would know what happened?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Is that
No.
what you were trying to do?
No, Your Honor.
What did Chief Berkowitz tell you about his knowledge of John O'Keefe's body being found just after 6 a.m.?
Objection.
Did you tell Chief Berkowitz that you had been with John O'Keefe and you were at the crime scene the night before?
Objection.
Sustain, you can ask that differently.
Did you inform Chief Berkowitz that you had been with John O'Keefe the night before?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I believe I may have told him at some point that I saw John at the waterfall.
Did you tell Chief Berkowitz that you had been at 34 Fairview?
I believe I did.
Did you tell him that your vehicle was parked just feet away from where John's body was discovered?
No, because I didn't know where he was discovered.
Did you tell Chief Berkowitz that you and Brian Albert had a call at 2:22 in the morning?
Objection.
Did you tell Chief Berkowitz that you had been flirting with John O'Keefe's girlfriend in the weeks prior to his death?
No.
Did you ever tell Chief Berkowitz about the nature of your interest in Miss Read?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you tell Chief Berkowitz that you had seen Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Read the night before and that Miss Read had ignored you?
Objection.
Break that down, Mr. Jackson.
You indicated just a second ago that when I asked, did you tell Chief Berkowitz that your Jeep was parked just feet away from where John O'Keefe's body was found, you said, I had no idea where John O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
That's correct.
You had just spoken with Brian Albert, right?
He said in front of the house.
All he said was John O'Keefe was found in front of the house. He didn't say right outside on my front lawn.
He said he was found out in front of his house unresponsive.
Okay. If he was out in front of his house, then you would know, because your Jeep was also parked out in front of his house, that your Jeep would just be feet away from him, correct?
Objection.
Did you tell Chief Berkowitz that you had texted John O'Keefe, have him come over to 34 Fairview just hours before he was discovered dead in the yard?
No.
Did you think any of that was important when talking to the Chief of Police of the Canton Police Department?
I'll let him have it.
No, I didn't. There was no reason to tell him.
You've been an investigator for some 15 years, and you were a firefighter for years before that, correct?
Yes.
You're very familiar with some of the tools that are used in conducting modern investigations, correct?
Yes.
You'd agree that searching electronic devices and phones is an incredibly important investigative tool that modern investigators use, correct?
Objection.
In that form, I'll sustain it.
Are you aware that searching electronic devices is an important part of investigations?
Objection.
Are you aware of that, sir? Do you agree with that?
I've utilized phone data during the course of my investigations at times, yes.
So another way to put that is, obviously, phone data and electronic data is an important part of investigation, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
What time do you believe you got to Brian Albert's house that morning after you received the phone calls and woke up? What time did you make your way back over to Brian Albert's house?
Maybe around 7:15 in that area.
Was there any law enforcement presence there when you arrived?
I can't recall specifically. There could have been one police car. I'm not positive.
Did any officer ever ask you to take a look at your vehicle?
What time?
That time? But actually at any time?
No, to my knowledge, nobody from law enforcement associated with the investigation had ever asked to take a look at my vehicle.
So they certainly didn't ask that day, correct? On the 29th?
What I'm saying is, to my knowledge, nobody has ever asked me that.
Right. So that's my point. I'm just trying to break it down.
You're breaking. You want to tell me every instance when somebody could have asked me.
Correct.
Okay.
On the 29th, where you asked whether or not your vehicle could be
Searched or inspected? What do you mean?
either one.
Well, I would consider a search the inside of the vehicle more so than the outside. I would consider the outside more of an inspection. I would have been happy to show them it.
I'm sure you would have. I'm asking, did they ask?
No,
They didn't ask to search it. They didn't ask to inspect it.
no.
When you met with troopers, who was it that you met with on the 3rd of February?
Trooper Proctor and Trooper Buka.
Did either Trooper Proctor or Trooper Buchnick ask to inspect your vehicle, otherwise search it?
Not to my recollection.
And to this day, nobody from Massachusetts State Police has ever indicated that they want to inspect your vehicle.
No.
When you entered the house that morning, Brian Albert was there, Nicole Albert, Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert Jr., and Julie Albert were all there. I'm sorry, had Julie Albert gotten there yet?
She came after me.
Okay, so at some point, all the people that I just ticked off, they were all inside the house, right?
Brian Albert Jr., Nicole, Brian, Matt, and Jen.
You all discussed the incident together, correct?
I wouldn't describe it that way, no.
Did each of you discuss your own perspectives about what had happened the night before in the early morning hours?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
People were in shock at the table trying to figure out what happened. The math didn't make sense. John and the defendant never showed up. People were in shock.
Trying to figure out what to say, right?
No.
And you were all talking within earshot of each other, right?
We were all there in the kitchen talking together.
At this meeting, these were friends and family, correct?
Excuse me?
These were friends and family amongst themselves, and you being a friend, these were friends and family at house discussing this incident, correct?
Yes.
So at this meeting, you actually instructed Jennifer McCabe to call Canton PD and ask someone to come back.
Objection.
Sustained is to that form. You can ask it differently.
At some point, did an officer come back to re-interview Jen McCabe?
Yes.
McCabe had told you that she had information about something that Miss Read had said, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Did she tell you that morning?
She didn't specifically tell me anything. She made a statement at the table to the group of people and she clearly seemed like she was in shock. She was upset. And she made a statement, something to the effect that Karen had opined that she had hit John.
What she actually said was, I hope I didn't hit him, correct?
Objection.
It's not what I heard.
Who did you ever tell this to?
I've reported that.
That she said, I hit him?
Yes, I've reported it.
What you reported was Karen said, I hope I didn't hit him, and you said, oh, you need to tell Canton PD that. Isn't that right?
No, I don't think that's what I said, no.
You're as sure about that as you are about that 222 call, right?
Objection.
Mr. Higgins, what time did you leave Brian Albert's house?
It would have been, I believe, when Sergeant Lank arrived, and I think Lieutenant Gallagher might have been with him.
You weren't scheduled to work that Saturday, correct?
No.
Matter of fact, you weren't on duty at all.
No, I wasn't.
But you didn't go home and get some sleep or run errands. You went directly to Canton PD from 34 Fairview yet again, didn't you?
Who could sleep after somebody just was discovered like that?
Did you go home or did you?
I don't believe I did, no. I believe there might have been a stop at Canton PD before I went home.
As a matter of fact, you didn't just stop at Canton PD. You spent the entire day at Canton PD on the 29th, didn't you?
I don't know that I spent the entire day there, no.
Well, you've got a key card, right?
I do have a key card.
And that key card logs swipes.
That's correct.
So it logs where you go, access to, and access inside the
Yes.
Canton PD, correct?
Yes.
When you got to Canton PD, and you're telling this jury you don't know how long you spent there.
I don't know how long I spent there. I don't know if I left and I came back. I don't recall.
So if the records indicate that you were there from 9 a.m. after 5,
I don't know how the records would indicate that.
I'll show you in a second.
Okay.
While you were at Canton PD, did you speak again to Brian Albert?
I don't remember.
While you were at Canton PD, did you speak again to Chief Berkowitz?
Most likely.
While you were at Canton PD, did you speak with Brian Albert's brother, Kevin Albert?
I don't believe so. It says Canton Police, all events logged by day.
So don't read it out loud, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just, do you recognize
Yes, I do.
it? Yes.
This appears to be a log of key swipes in and around Canton PD, correct?
Yes.
And it's in reverse chronological order, in other words.
I didn't note that, but okay.
Okay. You acknowledge that is a record of the key swipes that everybody uses moving in and around Canton PD, going through doors, every place that needs a key swipe is logged.
I would assume that's what that is, yes.
All right. It shows that you entered Canton the first time on the 29th at 1:27 a.m. Does that sound about right? When you got there, you say to move your cars.
It's possible.
All right. It shows that you were granted access to floor corridor 227. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
What about floor corridor 226 on the second floor?
Second floor would make sense because I went in the building and then to the second floor.
By the way, did Brian Albert ever mention what time the officers cleared the scene?
No.
Without telling me the substance of the conversation, did he tell you when he talked to you at 7:20 or?
Not that I recall, no.
But you remember by the time you got there, the scene had basically been cleared. There wasn't a bunch of emergency vehicles, crime scene tape, nothing like that.
I didn't see fire trucks. I might have saw a cruiser. I can't be sure. I don't recall.
You're not sure about that either.
Sorry?
Not sure about even seeing a cruiser, correct?
Not 100%, no.
Certainly were not contacted by a law enforcement officer who took your name and ID or anything like that.
No.
Parked and walked in the house.
Yes.
Let's have that document marked as next in order, Bates pages. It represents Bates pages 2850 to 3016.
All right, so marked for identification. Is there an agreement this is coming in, Mr. Lally?
There is not, no.
All right, so that's marked for identification, not next in order. Thank you.
Mr. Higgins, if you'll look at Bates page 3015, which actually is in order, that's not reverse chronological, it's the second to the last page.
I have it.
Can you take a look at the 8th entry from the bottom?
I see it.
Does that indicate that this all occurred on 1/29/22, this entry at least?
I only, on that 8th entry, I see that's associated with my name. I don't know what the other ones are associated with.
Right. It would be other individuals in Canton PD. This is the entire log for 129, right?
Okay, but all I'm saying is that just my name is next to that. I don't see any other names, so,
Right.
okay.
So on 1/29/2022, I'm just trying to orient you. At 1:27 and 52 seconds.
I see it.
Access granted, Brian Higgins, rear entry to secure corridor, rear entry to secure corridor, correct?
Yes.
All right, so that appears to be what the log entry or the key swipe entry looks like when it's logged, correct?
Yes.
If you look at page 2970,
Okay.
take a look at
You said
time-
2976?
That's Bates page 29, at the bottom right-hand.
I see it, yes.
Look at the time entry for 9:23 and 39 seconds.
9:23 and what?
39
And that's on 2976?
should be.
Give me the time again, please.
Why don't we do it this way? This is an exact copy.
Yeah, this time's all over the place. My apologies.
That's
Okay,
fine.
all right, thank you.
9:23:39. I'm sorry, if you got that in mind.
I do, I see it. It's highlighted.
At 9:23:39, that shows that you were granted access to the Sallyport to front exit, front entry to Sallyport, correct?
Yes,
There's only one Sallyport at Canton PD, correct?
yes, and there's a door on each side of the Sallyport.
Two
Yes,
bay doors, right?
2 bay doors on each side,
And
yes.
then there's a
Pass-through.
personal pass-through door as well. I want to try to speed this up just a bit because it's small print, reverse chronological order. On page 2976, there's also an entry, same page, should be right above that, 92350, showing that you were granted access from booking to Sallyport as well, correct?
Okay, 2976, and what was the time?
Page,
Yes,
it's about maybe 6 entries above, entries up. You'll look for time 9:23 and 50 seconds.
I see. Yes,
All right, and that shows that you were granted access to the Sallyport and then from Sallyport to booking, correct?
says booking to booking. Yes,
That indicate, I have no idea what the last question was. I'll see if I can make a new one up. At 9:23 and 50 seconds in the morning, you were granted access booking to Sallyport and Sallyport to booking, meaning swiped the key card in the door going from booking to Sallyport.
yes.
Okay. I don't want to belabor this because we could get bogged down into it all day long. Would you have any quarrel if those logs indicated that you were moving in and around Canton PD at 9:28, 9:53, 9:53, 9:54, 9:54, 11:40? We can look at every one of them if you want to.
Well,
That doesn't refresh your recollection.
it'd not be uncommon for me to move around Canton PD at various times, the dates,
Right.
middle of the night, during the day. But just because I swiped in somewhere and then you have a swipe at the end of the day doesn't mean I was there the whole day. I could have left, I could have come back, and I truly don't have a recollection, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't there all day.
Fair enough. If we moved from 11:40 to 11:44, 11:45, 11:47, 11:51, 11:52, and then jump to 2:05, would that be an explanation where you might have gone out for lunch, 11:52?
Could have.
Okay, come back. If
Yes.
there's a 2:05 and 56 entry, then obviously you're there, right?
If the card was swiped, I was there.
You're not giving that card to anybody else.
No, I'm not.
No way, right? Let's just look at 2905, because I want you to be comfortable. Page 2905, and let's look at that 2:05 and 56 entry.
I'm at 2905. Where would you like me to look?
About right there, basically middle of the page.
I see it.
Okay. So that would indicate that you were back at Canton PD at least 2:05:56, and you were granted access Sallyport to front door, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Okay. At 3:10 p.m., you called Brian Albert's brother, Kevin Albert, correct?
I don't know. It's possible.
Okay.
I don't remember every phone call I made that day.
Understood. Do you remember talking to Kevin Albert?
I don't.
So you don't remember what you discussed with him?
No, no,
Do you remember that it was a 12-minute phone call?
no. I don't remember having any phone call, but I'm sure it's possible that we spoke.
Do you remember Kevin Albert providing you any information about the ongoing investigation into John O'Keefe's death?
No,
Did you ask him about additional information concerning John O'Keefe's death?
no,
Were you providing details back to Brian Albert that you were receiving while at Canton PD?
absolutely not, no.
You recall that 2 minutes after you cleared the call with Kevin Albert, you then called Brian Albert.
It's possible.
So I think the question was, do you remember that?
Your Honor, there was a lot of phone calls made that day. It was an upsetting day. I spoke to multiple people at multiple times. I don't have a recollection. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Just to close this loop, that appears to be your phone record, correct?
Yes,
And it appears that you made a call at 3:10 for 12 minutes with Kevin Albert, correct?
yes,
3:10 plus 12 was 3:22, correct?
yes,
You had cleared the call about 3:22, is that right?
yes,
And then it shows Brian Albert then calls you at 3:24, correct?
yes.
And you two speak for 6 minutes, is that right?
6 minutes, 5 seconds.
Does that refresh your recollection that you made those calls?
Based on the record, yes.
Is that just a coincidence that you were talking to Brian Albert and Kevin Albert within?
There was a lot going on that day. People were upset, and I don't remember the phone calls. I don't deny making the phone calls. I just don't remember them.
Do you remember providing information that you were learning from Kevin Albert to Brian Albert?
Absolutely not.
Just below those phone calls to Kevin Albert and Brian Albert, two additional phone calls that you had with Chief Berkowitz, and then Brian Albert again, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Higgins, it looks an awful lot like you're gleaning information from Canton PD. Were you doing that?
Objection.
I sustain the objection in that form. You can ask one part of that question.
Sure. Were you getting any information from Canton PD?
No, I wasn't.
Did you provide any information to Brian Albert
No, I did not.
based on any conversations or conduct at Canton PD?
No.
But you were, in fact, on the phone with all of those interested parties throughout the day, you'll agree.
I was,
Answer that.
okay,
There's
yes,
no
Your Honor.
objection. You can answer it.
Yes, they're friends, and I was on the phone with them, yes.
And sir, you were not on duty that day, correct?
No,
You are not a Canton police officer, correct?
that's correct.
You were not assigned to this investigation in any formal capacity, were you?
I was not.
As a matter of fact, you're a witness in a homicide investigation. That's your only role in this, correct?
That's correct, but they're still my friends,
And
yes.
yet you're still having conversations with Kevin Albert at Canton PD while you're at Canton PD, correct?
Not about this.
And you're having conversations with Chief Berkowitz of Canton PD while you're at Canton PD, correct?
I had conversations with them, but not about this,
And
no.
you're consistently through the day calling Brian Albert, aren't you?
I had conversations with Brian Albert. John was found on his lawn. Yes, of course I had phone conversations with him.
I want to take you back for a second to a couple of other entries, including one at 3:57, one at 3:58, and one at 4:07. I'm going to draw your attention to 2885 and 2886. Once you have the pages, I'll give you the times once again.
2885?
2885 and 2886. We'll start with 2886 and then work backward.
Okay.
First entry is at 3:57 and 54 seconds.
3:57 and 54 seconds, I see it.
Brian Higgins booking to Sallyport, correct?
It says Brian Higgins, communication to pedestrian Sallyport, communication to pedestrian Sallyport.
Look at the one just above it. That's 358.24. Look at 354. But the one probably is going to be just below it because it's reversed.
You said 3:57:54, correct?
Correct.
That's what I just read.
Got it. Look at 6 entries below at 357.36.
3:57:36. I see it. Access granted, Brian Higgins, booking to Sallyport, Sallyport to booking.
Then there's one more on page 2885. Look for 407.47.
407:47.
Correct.
I have it. Access granted, Brian Higgins, booking to Sallyport, booking to Sallyport.
And there's no record in that document of you exiting, correct? That's just booking to Sallyport.
Yes, there's no record. I don't know if it records you going up.
You
That's
answered my
fine.
question. There's no record of it, correct?
Not that I can see here, no.
And you're aware that's about 90 minutes before Karen Read's SUV was delivered to that Sallyport, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Are you aware that her car ended up in that Sallyport where you were at 5:36?
I'm aware her car ended up there, yes.
Are you aware that there was other evidence that was also being held in the Sallyport?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you see any other evidence in the Sallyport related to this case?
No.
Did you see a bag, grocery bag with 6 solo cups there?
Objection.
Did you see anything that seemed out of the ordinary there?
All I would do is use that as a cut through. I did not see anything.
Are you aware that at 5, well, let me ask you this. You and Chief Berkowitz were moving in and through, at least in some parts of the day, in and through Canton PD together, correct?
At some points we might have been together. We weren't together all day.
Matter of fact, he was also in the Sallyport around the same time you were, correct?
I don't recall that, no.
The records would reflect that, correct? The records that are in front of you?
Objection.
You were in the Sallyport the last time you're logged into the Sallyport, it's 4:07. Do you remember seeing Chief Berkowitz at Sallyport at 4:14?
No, and if that says that I'm logged, that could be me cutting
Mr.
through.
Higgins, all I'm asking you I'm not asking you what you did. I'm asking you where you were.
I don't know where I was at that specific time.
Well, you walked into the Sallyport, we know that,
If I walked in, I was
correct?
cutting through, yes.
Right. Was Chief Berkowitz in the Sallyport at 4:14?
Not that I recall, no.
Was he there at 4:30?
I don't remember ever seeing him in the Sallyport, no.
Was he there at 4:33?
I don't remember ever seeing Chief Berkowitz in the Sallyport.
At 4:50?
Objection.
Sustained. Let's move through this, please.
Finally, was he there at 5:36 and 37 seconds at the same time Karen Read's vehicle was delivered?
I don't remember.
Do you remember Chief Berkowitz, or were you with Chief Berkowitz when he made a call to the front desk?
No, I don't remember anything like that, no.
Do you remember Chief Berkowitz calling the front desk at 5:42 and saying, "Shut the door"?
Objection.
Sustained.
You remember any kind of call shutting the barracks, meaning shutting the Sally Port?
Objection.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember anything like that, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
You didn't leave Canton PD until close to 6 p.m., isn't that right?
I don't know what time I left.
Could it have been 5:50, 6 o'clock?
I don't recall what time I left.
You're aware that there's video surveillance feeds in the Sally Port garage, correct?
That's correct, yes. Around the building.
Were you in the Sally Port at 5:36 when the car was delivered?
I don't have any recollection of that, no.
It's one thing to say I don't remember. It's another thing to say, no, I was not there.
I don't remember being there, no.
Is it possible that you could have been there when that car was delivered?
I don't believe I was, no.
You don't believe you were? or
I
you
don't
weren't?
believe I was, no.
You're aware that the video surveillance feed from the Sally Port garage at or around 5:36, the precise time when the car was delivered, is missing, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you receive a flurry of phone call from Brian Albert and Chief Berkowitz indicating that some taillight pieces or a taillight piece had been recovered at 34 Fairview later that evening?
Objection.
Did you receive a call at all, without telling me what the conversation consisted of, around 6:12 p.m. from Brian Albert,
I don't know what day you're referring to.
the 29th?
No, I don't remember any phone calls like that.
Do you remember 3 minutes later getting another call from Chief Berkowitz at 6:16 p.m. that lasted about 5 minutes and 15 seconds?
No.
You look at the entries for 6:12, 6:16,
Are you referring to the,
6:12, and 6:16.
okay, I see those, yes.
There was a call at 6:12 Brian Albert made to you for a duration of 1 minute and 7 seconds, correct?
Yes,
Then right after that, there was a call from Chief Berkowitz to you at 6:16 that lasted 5 minutes and 15 seconds, correct?
yes.
They telling you taillight pieces had been found at the location.
Objection.
Sustained.
Your testimony is that you don't recall the substance of those conversations at 6:12 and 6:16.
I don't, no.
Isn't it true that you were asked about those phone calls at another hearing?
I might have been, I don't recall.
And did you testify at the other hearing that, in fact, what was discussed, the substance of the taillights being found at the location?
No, that's not what that was in reference to.
Were you being provided information from your friend, Chief Berkowitz, about the progress of the investigation?
No,
Were you providing your friend, Brian Albert, information about the progress of the investigation or what you perceived it to be?
no, I didn't have any information on the investigation.
Interviewed about this case in any formal capacity until 5 days later, correct?
That sounds about right.
February 1st, Trooper Proctor?
I'm not exactly sure the date, but it was several days after, yes.
I'm sorry, I said February 1st, maybe it's
I don't-
February 3rd.
I don't know the date, but we were into February.
Where did that interview take place?
Sharon, Mass.
I'm sorry?
Sharon, Mass.
At what location?
Sorry?
What location?
Objection.
The interview was not at a police station.
It was not, no.
By the time you interviewed with Trooper Proctor, you had already had numerous conversations with Brian Albert. Is that safe to say?
Well, the interview was with both Trooper Proctor, Sergeant Buchanan, and of course I've talked to Brian Albert because of what took
Mr.
place.
Higgins, that was a yes or no question.
Yeah, of course I've talked to him, yes.
Okay, and the answer is yes, right? Can we agree?
The answer is yes.
Thank you. By the time you spoke with Trooper Proctor and Trooper Buchanan, you had already had numerous conversations with Chief Berkowitz, correct?
Yes.
You had already had numerous conversations with Kevin Albert.
Yes.
You had already had this meeting with the Alberts and the McCabes over at 34 Fairview. Is that right?
I went to the house.
And discussed this case, as you earlier described in your
I
testimony.
discussed what we're trying to figure out what
You
happened.
discussed this case, Mr. Higgins.
Well, at that point, it wasn't a case.
Okay, I'm not parsing words about what a case is versus a matter versus an issue. You understood my question, didn't you?
Yes.
Is there a reason you don't want to answer that question?
I don't have a problem.
Objection, Your Honor.
Why don't you go ahead and explain?
Well, I feel he's trying to make it sound like something it wasn't. It
I'm
was.
not trying to make it sound like anything, sir. I'm asking a question. Had you discussed this case or the issues surrounding this case with those folks?
I
at
did
34
discuss
Fairview?
things when I went back to the house, yes.
And that was before you met with Trooper Proctor and Trooper Buchanan,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
You had already spent an enormous amount of time at Canton PD. We've just gone through those records. Is that right?
I have been at Canton PD, yes.
And you had been able to talk to, you had access at least to all the officers, correct?
What do you mean by, can you
Anybody that was coming and going at Canton PD.
access for what purpose?
Just to walk by them, to hear what they were saying, see what they were doing.
Yeah, it's not what I was doing, no.
I'm not accusing you of doing anything. I'm saying you had access to the individuals within the Canton PD, correct?
To interact if needed, yes.
And very obviously, you had access to the Sally Port
And access, yes, and that's a cut-through I used all the time.
and anything that was in it, correct?
I wouldn't need anything in it.
It was only after all that Michael Proctor thought that you were worthy of a conversation.
Objection.
I'll rephrase it. It was only after all of that you were interviewed by Michael Proctor and Trooper Buchanan, correct?
I wasn't interviewed to the following days. That's correct.
At some point on February 4th, Chief Berkowitz called you to personally inform you that he had personally found taillight at 34 Fairview. Is that right?
He did tell me that, yes.
And to be clear, that's the same Ken Berkowitz that you were with in the Sally Port.
I don't recall being in the Sally Port with him, no.
What did you do with that information when you learned from Chief Berkowitz that he personally saw a taillight piece as he drove by?
I didn't do anything with the information.
Did you call Brian Albert?
No, Brian Albert called me.
You were asked this specific question in the other proceeding in June of 2023, correct?
I don't know if it was the specific question. I was asked a series of questions on how the phone calls came in. That's what I was asked.
And your answer was, it's 100% probable that I told him about that, meaning I told Brian Albert about my conversation with Ken Berkowitz, correct?
It's possible.
Was that your statement or not?
It was my statement then, but I've thought about it, yes.
And you've changed your statement somehow?
I changed my statement, but I think the way the phone calls came in is Brian Albert told me, you're not going to believe what was found on the front lawn, and I believe Ken Berkowitz told me he found the taillight, and I'm referring to the taillight from the both of them. I didn't provide any information to anybody.
Well,
information was provided to me.
What you actually said was, it's 100% probable that I told him about that. Yes, 100%. I'm not hiding that fact, but you're asking me if I recollect specifically. I know I called him after
Objection,
that
Your Honor.
call.
All right, so too many facts. Go slow.
Sure. You said, yes, 100%, correct?
In that testimony, I did, yes.
And then in that testimony, you went on to say, I'm not hiding that fact, but you're asking me if I recollect specifically, correct?
I don't have it in front of me. That's what you're telling me.
You went on to say, I know I called him after that phone call, correct?
I don't know.
And you went on to say, if that's when Chief Berkowitz told me, listen, I didn't do anything wrong in this, end quote. That was your statement prior hearing, correct?
So I'm going to strike the end.
You said you don't recall that entire testimony, right?
Not that portion, but I know I was asked about how the phone calls came in and what was said.
Do you think it would refresh your recollection to see a transcript of your answer?
Is this it right here? I'm going to read it.
Does that refresh your recollection to what your testimony was under oath in June of 2023?
I do.
And you said, if that's what Chief Berkowitz told me, listen, I didn't do anything wrong in this, correct?
That was the statement I made, yes.
Why did you say, listen, I didn't do anything wrong in this?
Objection.
Why'd you say that?
I felt they were being accusatory, and I was trying to explain what was going on. And what I had said over that was, I believe what I said, something to the effect, I can't be 100% positive. And then when I went on to say, it's probable. But I felt like they were being accusatory, and I was trying to explain how the phone calls came in. I've had time to reflect about it after that, since that testimony. And that information about the taillight that was found was provided by each person. I didn't provide any information to anybody.
Next question.
Thank you. You said, look, I didn't do anything wrong in this because it looks like you and Ken Berkowitz were colluding to provide information to Brian Albert, correct?
Objection.
Is that correct?
Absolutely not correct. That's
And
wrong.
you knew that was going to look like collusion, which is why you said, look, I didn't do anything wrong in this.
Objection.
Objection sustained.
Mr. Higgins, if you wanted to get rid of, and you've dealt with cell phones and electronic devices in your career many times, correct?
Over my career, yes.
Probably even written search warrants for them, things of that nature, right?
Yes.
If you wanted to destroy evidence on your cell phone, what kind of steps might you take to do that?
Objection.
If you wanted to just get rid of information on your cell phone that would be unrecoverable, what steps might you take?
Objection.
Do you know how to get rid of information on your cell phone?
Objection.
That's allowed. You can answer that.
Do I know how to get rid of information? I think there's different ways that you could wipe your phone.
Anything else?
You could wipe your phone. Factory reset.
Factory reset might be one, wiping your phone, taking the SIM card out.
I don't know that the SIM card's going to take information that's on the phone out.
So that might be one avenue. You could break the SIM card in half or
It could,
snap it.
yes.
You know the SIM card stores an enormous amount of data. The phone's just a brick, right?
No, I don't know that.
Okay. You could also, if you take the SIM card out, you just get rid of the phone somehow, right? Just destroy it.
Yes.
You might even consult with some kind of an expert to help learn how to permanently erase things from a phone, like a forensics expert, for instance.
Objection.
On Saturday, January 29th, you spent much of the morning at Brian Albert's house, and then the rest of the day variously at Canton PD. You would agree with that, correct?
No. You said I spent much of the morning at Brian Albert's house?
Correct. In other words, you went over there at whatever it was, 7:50, 8 o'clock, something like that, and then until about 9 o'clock,
No, I got over there around 7 o'clock, and I was there less than an hour. I wasn't there most of the day.
Okay,
I never
fair
went back there.
So you spent time at Brian Albert's house, then much of the rest of the day at Canton PD, correct?
Yes,
And then the very next day, that Sunday, you called a friend of yours, a guy named Matt Kelch, didn't you?
yeah, he's my best friend,
And
yes.
he's a special agent with the FBI, isn't he?
No, he's not.
Was he then?
He's never been a special agent with FBI. He's a special agent with ATF.
My mistake. I thought he was with the FBI. He's a federal special agent,
He's a coworker of mine, yes.
which makes him a federal special agent, right?
An ATF agent, yes.
And does he work for or have access to the Regional Computer Forensics Lab?
Yes, he works over there.
Okay, that's the FBI Regional Computer Forensics Lab, correct?
Yes.
That's how I got my mistake. I apologize.
Well, I just want to make sure the record's reflected correctly.
You and me both. So you reflected it correctly. So Matt Kelch is an ATF agent who works at the FBI Regional Computer Forensics Lab, correct?
Yes.
And he's an expert in digital forensics, is he not?
He has a level of expertise more than myself,
And
yes.
he's one of your best friends.
He is my best friend.
You spoke to him about the death of John O'Keefe, did you not?
Yes.
And you asked him for a personal favor off the books, correct?
Objection.
Did you ask him for a personal favor?
No.
Did you ask him to show you or consult with you how to pull things off of your phone that you decide to get off your phone?
I asked him how I could pull text strings off my cellular telephone for the purpose of providing them to law enforcement.
This was not in connection with any case that he was working, correct?
Correct.
It was not in connection with any case you were working, correct?
Objection.
Objection sustained, but you already answered. I'll strike that answer. Second question you can answer. It's in connection to any case you.
No, Your Honor.
Next question.
But you asked your friend to utilize his resources to teach you how to extract certain information off your phone? Is that what you did?
I asked him if it was possible to get this off, if there was a method to get this off my phone so I could provide it to law enforcement.
And that information was selected by you, correct?
2 particular text threads, yes.
Right. In other words, there was nobody else that was picking and choosing what to get off your phone. That was just you.
It was me, yes.
And the reason you did that, Mr. Higgins, is that you wanted to control and limit the amount of information that was pulled off your phone, right?
Objection.
Is that why you did it?
No, I did it because I wanted to provide it to law enforcement, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
But you could have just provided your phone to law enforcement and let them image the entire thing, correct?
I guess that was an option, yes.
And you knew that was an option at the time. And you're a trained
What's the question?
You knew it was an option to just hand your phone over. Just
In-
pick it up and give it to them.
And there was also an option to provide it to them as well.
Right. But you chose the one that you got to select the information, not the one where they would get everything, correct?
Objection.
Changes to that form.
Did you actually go to the FBI Computer Forensics Lab?
Yes. Let me correct that. I didn't go to the lab itself. I went to what they refer to as a kiosk on the first floor over at FBI.
Okay.
And all local PDs, law enforcement, have access to that.
And that's obviously,
It's an unrestricted area. You can be in there, as I understand it, unaccompanied if you're local law enforcement. It's on the first floor.
that is a federal facility, however.
Yes, it is.
Did you utilize any computer or any data extraction machinery, if you will? A computer or something to extract this data?
Well, it was a machine. I don't know what it's called.
Okay, fair enough. I'll use the word machine. I don't know what it's called. So you hooked that phone up to a machine, correct?
Yes,
And that machine belonged to the FBI. It didn't belong to you, is that right?
that's correct.
So that was a federal resource, not for anything having to do with any official case that you were working. Isn't that right?
Objection.
My notices, so what I need to see. Conley, if you just go and just stand next to your client, Mr. Jackson's going to make an offer of proof of a question he's about to ask your client, or a couple of questions he's about to ask your client. Doesn't make any sense to me that somebody has counsel and the counsel is not aware of a potential issue. You'll hear the offer of proof. I'll let you speak to Mr. Higgins before this actually happens before the jury. So I was going to ask you to identify yourself.
My name is William.
The witness has indicated that he utilized federal resources for personal gain. The specifics of that testimony have been as follows. He indicated that he contacted Matt Kelch, a federal agent. He indicated that he utilized a federal facility that was, he called it an unsecure facility, but it's a federal facility notwithstanding, and that the two of them, he and Agent Kelch, utilized federal resources in the form of some kind of a machine, as the witness indicated, for his own personal gain, so that he could, as a witness, in no official capacity, working any official case, and in Matt Kelch's capacity as an individual rather than an agent, they both work together to download certain information from the witness's phone in anticipation of turning that highly selected, highly curated information over to law enforcement so that he could later ultimately destroy his phone, which this witness in fact did.
Okay, so it's not entire, I disagree with you. I don't think it's reached that level. His testimony was that he went to a kiosk on the first floor where all local police departments can go. It's unrestricted, it's on the first floor. And we just got to the part about a machine in the kiosk when you mentioned an FBI resource. So what is your question? What questions do you intend to ask this witness now?
Whether he is aware that under 5 CFR 2635.72, it is a federal offense to use his public office, to use any public office for his own private gain or for the gain of persons or organizations with which you are associated personally. In other words, an FBI agent or an ATF agent cannot use federal resources for personal gain. The fact that he contacted an ATF agent, the fact that he utilized a facility that is owned by the federal government, run by the federal government, paid for by taxpayer dollars, and the fact that he used a machine that is owned by the federal government to download certain information for his own personal gain, that personal gain being, these are the curated texts that I'm going to turn over to law enforcement, that's a federal offense.
All right, so those questions are going to be asked. I don't know, there's been an objection to them. I'm not sure I'm going to let them in, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak privately with your client in the back room there. Can you do it in short order, or do you need more time?
I can do it in about 10 seconds.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so why don't you go back and talk to him? I'll stop bringing the jury, or getting the jury lined up to come back. Let's bring the jurors in, please. We have a very few minutes left, Mr. Jackson.
Understood. Mr. Higgins, you indicated that the phone was hooked up to some sort of machine at the FBI kiosk, correct?
Yes.
You're aware, sir, that under 5 CFR 2635.702, you may not use your public office for your own personal or private gain or for the gain of persons or organizations with which you are associated personally under pain of a federal offense, correct?
Objection.
No, Your Honor.
Are you aware that under 5 CFR 2634.704, it's a felony to quote...
Objection, Your Honor, as to reading.
Go ahead and finish the question.
For an employee, an employee has a duty to preserve and conserve government property and shall not use such property or allow its use for other than authorized purposes. Were you aware of that federal regulation?
That objection sustained.
Notwithstanding those regulations, you utilized the services of Matt Kelch as a friend and a colleague, but utilizing federal resources to pull information off your phone, correct?
Objection.
Sustained as to that form.
In fact, we're successful in getting information off your phone, which is the text that you turn over to the Commonwealth, correct?
Objection.
In that form, you're almost there, Mr. Jackson. That form was improper.
The information that was ultimately pulled off your phone was the information that you selected and you and Matt Kell worked together to get off your phone, correct?
Objection.
Is that correct?
No, Your Honor, if I could explain.
Sure.
He walked me through on how I could pull the text string with John O'Keefe and the defendant. He walked me through the process, how to use the machine.
And then you did that.
I did do that. That's
And
correct.
that's what you turned over to the police.
That's correct.
And any other information would still be on your phone ending in 5421, correct?
Well, that information stayed on my phone. I just took those strings off and provided them to the Mass State
Right.
Police.
So where's your phone?
I do not have that phone anymore.
You've destroyed that phone, haven't you?
No, I threw the phone away.
Well, that's destroying the phone, isn't it?
I had every right to do that.
I didn't ask you about your rights. I asked you what you did.
Objection.
Sustained.
You destroyed the phone by removing the SIM card, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you do that? Did you pull the SIM card out?
Objection.
Did you pull the SIM card out of your phone?
Your Honor, to the best of my recollection, if I did take the SIM card out, I would have when I threw it away, if I was going to take it out, I would break it or cut it. But I did not wipe the phone. I did not take anything else off it. But if I was going to throw the phone away, that's what I would have done.
Okay.
As an ATF agent with electronic data experience, when you pull the SIM card out and break it, and then throw the phone away and the SIM card away, you don't need to wipe the phone.
Objection.
Sustained. Jackson, that's it.
Your Honor,
One more question.
I can do this in 30 seconds, I think. You were aware that there was a court order that you not alter, delete, or destroy or in any way manipulate your phone or the electronic data associated with it, correct?
Objection.
As to what date?
As of September 30th, 2022.
Objection. I don't believe that's what the court order was.
What's the question exactly, Your Honor? I'm sorry.
Ask the question again.
Sure. Were you served with a copy of a notice on September 30th, 2022, that you not alter or destroy or manipulate anything on your phone on September 30th?
I was served an order, yes, that's correct.
And isn't it true, in another hearing, you explained that on September 29th, the day before you claim you got that notice, you changed phone carriers and changed phone numbers?
And I maintained the phone.
Until you didn't, when you destroyed it a month later by pulling the SIM card out and throwing it away, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you do that in October? Did you destroy that phone?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you pull the SIM card out of your phone, Mr. Higgins?
It's possible that I did. I believe that's how I've testified, yes.
You testified
It's
at a previous-
possible that if I took it out, that it was either cut or broken.
It's not just
So
possible.
that,
And that would have been after the date the order was already denied.
Mr. Higgins, I have one question left. One question. Did you, Mr. Lally already standing. I haven't even started.
have a seat, Mr. Lally. Go ahead. Last question, Mr. Jackson.
Very simply, and then we're done. Did you remove the SIM card for that phone, drive onto a military base, throw the SIM card in one dumpster and the phone in a different dumpster?
That is not correct.
Did you testify that?
Was your one question, Mr. Jackson? All right. Folks, that's it for today. See you Tuesday. A great long weekend.